The Uroboros virus. This is the virus conducted by Albert Wesker as part of his plan to create a new world where those compatible with the virus would gain superhuman abilities just like Wesker. However, we never really get to see who would have been compatible with this virus had Wesker succeeded in his plans of complete global saturation. Now, we can obviously make a few guesses on some characters, such as Wesker himself. He would have most likely been compatible. Now, at the end of the game, when he infects himself with Uroboros, we don't really get to see him truly fuse with the virus properly because a few factors kind of interrupt it. For one, he was previously injected multiple times with his serum to stabilize his power by Chris and Sheva to the point that it acted like a poison. So that definitely had to have an effect on him. And then, furthermore, he was in a volcano, and fire is a major weakness to Uroboros. So those two things definitely had to interrupt the virus from properly fusing with Albert Wesker. Another character that would definitely have potential to be compatible with Uroboros would be Alex Wesker. And she too infects herself with the virus, but her issue is that she had a disease where she could not have her full potential unlocked like Wesker with the superhuman strength and speed, and so it's very possible that this disease was also disrupting her ability to be fully compatible with Uroboros. On top of that, she fell victim to her own virus, the T-Phobos virus previously, and it mutated her completely, and so those two factors may have also interrupted her ability to fully be fused with Uroboros properly. And then another character that we could assume would be compatible would be Albert Wesker's son, Jake Mueller, because he too has antibodies towards progenitor-based viruses and therefore would be more than likely compatible with Uroboros. So we could pretty much guess that those three characters would have compatibility. Outside of that though, we don't really know. However, I have a theory as to who would have been compatible with the Uroboros virus had it actually been released into the atmosphere. And it all ties into how Uroboros is created. As we all know, it is created with the progenitor virus, the T virus, and the G virus, all three being combined together. And it's the G virus in particular that I think is the key as to who would have truly been compatible with Uroboros. Because the G virus, as we all know, whoever is infected with it, they begin to mutate and then they seek out those who are related to them to continue to carry on the G virus strain. When William Birkin was infected, he was mutated and then started to seek out Sherry Birkin because she shared his DNA. And so that's who he was seeking after. And whenever he infected other people that weren't related to him, such as the police chief and the reporter Ben, those two individuals, they mutated to the point where the virus rejected them and would burst out of their chest, instantly killing them. But once he got to Sherry and he infected her, we see that she is compatible with the G virus as it begins to slowly mutate her and fuse with her DNA, as opposed to rejecting her and bursting out of her chest as it did to Irons and Ben. And so we can look at the G virus and then we can look at Uroboros and how when Wesker first developed it, it was actually highly aggressive to the point that he could not use it at all because anyone that he would test it on, they would instantly be killed by it. So he needed to find a way to stabilize it, and he does so by examining Jill and discovering that she still has the T virus within her body. It's just whenever Carlos gave her the vaccine in Resident Evil 3, it caused the virus to lie dormant in her system, and over time her body developed natural antibodies towards the virus. And so Wesker takes those antibodies and uses them to stabilize Uroboros. And so my theory is that since it was Jill's antibodies that were used to stabilize Uroboros, only Jill and those in her family tree would truly be compatible with Uroboros. Anyone outside of her family tree would not be compatible and therefore would mutate into a monstrosity much like what we see in Resident Evil 5 when some of the villagers get infected with it, and when Excella gets infected with it, they all mutate into a Uroboros monster. And so that's sort of how I think it might actually function, especially when you consider the fact that the G virus is one of the viruses used to develop Uroboros, so it would make sense that Uroboros would function very similarly to the G virus, and therefore Jill and anyone in her family tree would be compatible, and anyone outside of it would not. Now, of course, Albert Wesker, Alex Wesker, and Jake would be the exception to this theory, since those three characters are prodigies whenever it comes to progenitor-based viruses. So they would be the exception, but anyone else, they would need to be related to Jill in order to actually have a chance at being compatible with Ouroboros. And maybe Sherry as well. She could also arguably be an exception to the theory, since she's basically a perfected version of the G virus and could also potentially be compatible with G. But outside of that, I kind of feel like you have to be related to Jill to stand a chance at being compatible. But what are your thoughts on this theory? Do you think it is plausible? Does it make sense? Do you have your own theory? Let me know in the comments what you think on this. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up, and I will see you all on the next one. See you then.